June. Okay, now it is recorded. So I'm just gonna, since we are recording, I just want to let everyone know what this is. This is our Ask a Professional webinar series that the Mississippi Arts Commission provides. Today's topic is emergency resources for artists. And today we have Cameron Baxter Lewis with CERF Plus and Jennifer Leff of MusiCares. Okay, sorry about that. I made such a big deal of recording it that I forgot. Okay. But yeah, so we're gonna have Cameron speak, then Jennifer, then we're gonna open it up for a Q&A. So come ready with your questions for those listening in. And you can find that on our homepage, ms.arts.gov. Go to the resources tab and then tools for creators. And once you click on tools for creators, all of the past Ask a Professional webinars, plus this one, will be up on there. So you can always access this information free to the public. Okay. All right. So we're going to begin. And Cameron, you can go first. I'm going to mute myself. But if you need anything, just let me know and you can start sharing your screen.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you for the warm introduction. Thanks to Mississippi Arts Commission for having me here today, and to all of you all for joining us. And Maria, I forget to hit record every time, so don't worry about it. That is my usual way to start a presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. And I am using Google Slides, which is a little different for me. Usually I use PowerPoint, but thank you for having me. I am with the Craft Emergency Relief Fund, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment. But today our objectives are pretty straightforward. First, I'm going to talk about the Craft Emergency Relief Fund, and more specifically, some of the resources that they have available that may be of interest to you as an artist or as a friend of an artist. Secondly, I'm going to talk about some resources at large. So as Maria mentioned, I've worked in disaster relief since Hurricane Katrina, so almost 20 years. So I'm going to talk about some resources really from the disaster side of the world, but also some creative resources as well. And then lastly, we're going to talk about some advice from artists that I've overheard as we've worked with them through our grant programs. And I don't think there's anything they've said that will be incredibly enlightening to any of you, but I think it's helpful to hear it. And I think it's helpful to just think about it for a moment. So we'll kind of look at some of their crowdsourced comments. And then, as Maria mentioned, it seems like we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end of Jennifer's presentation. So first, I do want to note we have artists highlighted throughout this presentation. Always like to call them out when we can. This is Damon Melicon. He's a big chief of the Young Seminoles, and you can see him doing some of his beadwork. You can check out the next slide. That's the finished product. Incredible artist. So the Craft Emergency Relief Fund, I've been here for about 5 years, but the organization is going to celebrate its 40th anniversary relatively soon. The organization's origin story is very simple. It was created by craft artists for craft artists. And basically, a small group of craft artists would go to all of these shows in order to sell their work. And they'd always hear about somebody who wasn't able to attend because they had an emergency. So they would pass around a hat and collect donations for that person. That person would kind of receive two benefits. Number one, obviously, they would have some money in their pocket to help offset some of the costs from the emergency. But number two, it kind of let them know they were part of a network that really understood them and understood the precarious nature of being an artist and some of the financial instability that can be associated with that. Fast forward to today, and we really still have that emergency relief grant program. There are now $3,000 grants for craft artists who've had a practice-threatening emergency. That's kind of our best known resource. But we also have grants for artists to do any sort of preparedness measures, so to potentially protect themselves from a future emergency. That's called a Get Ready grant, and we'll look at that in just a moment. And a thing that we're not as well known for though we'd like to be, is that we're really trying to lean into advocacy for craft artists. So we sit in a lot of working groups that work around federal legislation and disaster relief for artists. And we try to be that voice in the room that says, well, how does this policy work for artists? How does all of this required supporting documentation work for artists? And we've had some small but huge wins most recently in that FEMA has changed some of their legislation in order to allow for tool replacement, which is a drum that we've been beating for about 20 years. We thought that an artist can't create unless they have their tools. So now they're offering a small grant or small award to artists who've experienced a federally declared disaster. So that's been a big win for us. And if you're interested in learning more about that initiative, I'm happy to share some links afterwards. So to continue talking about myself and our organization for just a moment more, I mentioned our emergency relief grants. Since I started 5 years ago, the number of grantees or artists that apply to this program has nearly tripled. And we're seeing a lot more climate-related disasters. So we have a lot of artists who were not originally in flood-prone areas that now are, especially in the New England or Northeast region, as well as wildfires have continued to increase and seem to be burning year-round. And as everybody here knows, especially in Mississippi, hurricanes are other major response that we see. So our emergency relief grant program is open year-round. If you know of a craft artist who's had a recent practice-threatening emergency, it doesn't have to be a disaster. It could be a medical emergency. It could be a broken bone. It could even be taking time off to care for somebody who maybe is sick and they weren't able to work during that period. Really, any unexpected practice-threatening emergency. Definitely encourage them to apply. But we have this other program called the Get Ready program. And this is kind of the feel-good version of the emergency relief grant program. The emergency relief grant program is very heavy. The Get Ready program is an opportunity for an artist to take a moment and really decide what they need in order to safeguard their practice. So that could look like studio safeguards. Maybe they install smoke detectors. Maybe they have hurricane shutters. But it could really be anything. It could be hiring a financial advisor. It could be archiving their work, should they ever need that for business insurance. It could be really anything that prevents a future emergency. That program is only open twice a year. So we usually do a fall and a spring cycle. The next cycle that will open will be in early September and will close in early October. So if you're interested in that program, definitely sign up on our website for our communications. We don't bombard you with them, so don't worry, we're not going to be calling you every 5 minutes, but we do weekly or bi-weekly communications that kind of have an advertisement for this program. Similar to emergency relief, we've also seen triple the number of interest in this, which I think is fantastic. And then lastly, I'll mention we have a gifts in kind program. So for artists that receive an emergency relief grant, we work with some small businesses that support the craft art community, and they provide an extra donation to artists. So that could be a $500 gift card for them to purchase materials. It could be even as big as a kiln. So we work with Scott Kilns, and they provide us 3 kilns a year for artists who have lost their kilns as a result of an emergency. So a really nice extra boost for folks who are going through a difficult time. And then I know people like numbers. These are some numbers of the program size in the left-hand corner. For past 5 years, we've awarded about $3 million to 2,000 craft artists. These guides, I'm super excited about, probably more excited than you would be about them because I've been working on them day in and day out. My own team hasn't even seen these yet, so you're kind of getting a sneak preview. But we've gone through all of our preparedness resources on our website through what we call our Studio Protector, and we're updating the content and we're updating the look and feel, and we're making them a lot more navigational, I guess. They're easier to work your way through. And these are just 4 of the resources. I think in total we're going to have about 14 available. So be on the lookout for these. They will hopefully be on our website in October. Currently, we have the older versions available, so you can still access similar information. And you can visit www.cerfplus.org/studio protector to check that out, or just cerfplus.org and go under the Get Ready page. But we have resources for folks to go through a checklist on when they're setting up their studio, or even if you have an existing studio and say, do I have fire safeguards? Is my electricity safe? Do I have the appropriate insurance? Do I have the appropriate contracts if I'm leasing this space, and or if I have other folks in this space with me, what sort of agreements do we have? Really nice way to kind of get a snapshot of how prepared your studio is for an unexpected emergency. So definitely check that out. It's a really popular resource. And then the other one that I'll call out is this building insurance guidebook. Really amazing resource for artists. And this is it helps provide an overview of all the different types of business insurance that are available for craft artists, as well as does a breakdown of what liability looks like, what umbrella policies look like, what additional options look like. And it's probably, I'm a little bit of a slow reader, it's probably a 10 to 15 minute read. So definitely believe this is worth investing your time in, checking out. But some really great resources. Again, we have some on our website, but these will be the new ones, which I'm super excited about. So the next thing I'm going to talk about may be resources that you are familiar with or maybe haven't heard of. These are emergency, mainly recovery resources. One is the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, otherwise known as NVOAD. And this is a group of organizations that respond to a disaster. And if I rattled off some of the members of this group, you would be familiar. It's the American Red Cross, it's Salvation Army, FEMA has representatives at this, some of the bigger name organizations, but it's really everybody who's part of that network. So it could be faith-based, it could be nonprofit, it could be private entities, and it's a organizing body so we can come together and figure out what each other are doing. And one of the things I love about the NVOAD network that I feel like a lot of folks don't know about is that each group has its own responsibility in recovery. So for example, if you're part of the Southern Baptist NVOAD group, you might go in and do chainsawing after an emergency. But if you're part of Nahama, which is a Jewish sect of the NVOAD, then you might go in and doing mucking and gutting and fixing houses. So everybody has their own role so we can be centrally coordinated. And really the purpose of this group is to remove duplication of efforts. So me and another organization don't show up and do the exact same thing. NVOAD, long story short, I get excited about that. Long story short, NVOAD has a resource center. You can check out some of the resources they have available on there for recovery, as well as if you want to volunteer after an emergency, it's a great place to go because they'll get you affiliated or connected with some of the organizations that are responding. So I always knew about NVOAD. I had never heard of NCAPER before I moved into the arts sector. NCAPER, National Coalition for Arts Preparedness and Emergency Response, has a very similar nature to NVOAD, and that it's an organizing body for the creative field after an emergency. Their director, Jan Newcomb, is a one-person shop, but she does some really incredible work, including hosting calls after major emergencies. She is still working on some of the Hawaii wildfire calls. They've been going on for quite some time. And really, if you are an artist or your organization that supports artists and you want to get involved after an emergency to offer support, NCAPER's a great place to visit first. They also have this really great arts guide. Jan led a presentation the other day where she called it outdated because it's, I think, through 2021 is 3 years old. I think it's still incredibly relevant, but it's really how do artists navigate federal disaster relief, which can feel very overwhelming and confusing. Some really great tips for arts organizations and artists. So definitely check that out if you're interested, and reach out to Jen if you have any interest in being part of NCAPER. A couple other things I'll mention. One that I was very skeptical of, but has done incredible things, is AIR. They have a crisis analysis and mitigation coach training. Fortunately, they've shortened that to the CAM training. And these are a group of people that go in after a disaster, and they do community development and arts recovery. So they're bridging the divide between emergency managers and the creative sector, and they're creating an infrastructure where they can sit in a room and decide what the community needs best. They ask the community, they have a whole process, and then deliver upon that. So an example of that would be doing creative messaging after a disaster on the radio so that folks know where to get information or recovery resources. Because we know creatives are really great at communication. Emergency managers want to get that information out there. It's a natural place for them to collaborate. Definitely check them out. They're doing some super cool projects soon. One of those is in St. Louis, and the other one is in Lafayette, I believe, Louisiana. Don't hold me to that, but I believe that that's true. CAM's really amazing program. Again, if you want to get involved, you can also volunteer with them. They have trainings a few times a year. If you are an artist who's looking for resources, NYFA, the New York Foundation for the Arts, has a really great page that kind of lists out everything that's available. They do their best to keep that current. That is a difficult task. I can appreciate that. But it's a good place that we often, when we're talking to artists who may not necessarily be craft artists, we often say, check out NYFA. They might have something that's specific to your medium or specific to your situation that could be of help. As well as MusiCares, who you'll hear about in just a minute. And then lastly, your state and regional arts organizations. I assume if you are at this presentation, you are already connected to the Mississippi Arts Commission, which is a great place to start. But you'd be surprised, I was surprised doing a Google search, just how many organizations are dedicated to creatives within 20 miles of where I live. Most recently, I was introduced to Friends of Writers, which is 15 minutes away from me, who supports writers, and we're doing some work together. But they're a great place to start. They often pass along really important information after an emergency, so definitely make sure to sign up for their communications. And I know we're getting close to time, so I think I have just enough time for this last slide. And these are just some words I've heard for artists that have recently experienced an emergency. The first one I think is the most important. And it sounds obvious, but somebody told me you just have to keep creating, even if it's not in the way that you want to. Maybe you don't have the tools. Maybe it's not even in the same medium that you're used to doing. You still have to keep that muscle active, as well as put that energy and stress that you have from an emergency into something positive. So in whatever way you can, continue to try to create, or at least think of new ideas for your practice. So I thought that was really helpful when somebody told me that. Secondly, know you aren't alone. I think right after an emergency, you feel like you're the only one who's ever gone through this. And it's a very isolating experience. I can guarantee you're not. And I think the human experience is very complicated. So definitely don't feel like you're alone. And that kind of goes into that last one, which is lean into your network, finding a support network, either of other artists, of organizations that you feel comfortable with. Those will be the place that kind of keep you going, as well as potentially have resources and financial support for you to get your practice up and going again. Take care of yourself. I don't need to say anything about that. We hear a lot about that, but it is super important. There's no wrong way to react to an emergency. I truly believe that. It's a roller coaster, and any day, moment, hour, minute can feel different, and that's totally normal. And then the last couple, I work with so many artists who say, I would apply for your grant, but I think somebody probably has it worse off. And I'm like, this is not a competition to see who has it the worst in the world for this grant. It's for folks who are having a difficult time. And so, just know that you deserve help too, and don't be shy about applying for grants if you've had an emergency. Um, and then, okay, not to be okay. It's cliche, but I think that is a great tip. And then lastly, I will say to pace yourself. Um, uh, Recovery from any emergency takes much longer than anyone thinks. I think you kind of rush into it and you want to fix everything at once, but it's going to be a process, and there's only so much energy and time you have each day. So, go easy on yourself. It's okay if the first week you're just taking pictures of the damage, and then you get to, a FEMA application, and then you look at other resources available. That's totally normal to pace that out. In fact, we typically don't hear from folks for emergency grants until 3 to 6 months after the event because they're just so overwhelmed with everything else going on. So, I think that's totally normal, and don't be hard on yourself if you need more time than you would expect to start to move into that recovery. So I think that's it. I won't take any more time. I know Jennifer has a wonderful presentation, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Cameron. That was great. That was really informative, and I really appreciate that. And we'll circle back during the Q&A. Now I'm gonna turn it over to Jennifer Leff of MusiCares. Jennifer, I'm gonna share my screen and get your PowerPoint up right now. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna put it in the slideshow view. How's that? Can everyone see that, Jennifer? Are you
Yes,
good? Okay.
yes.
All right. Okay.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry.
And Cameron, I just want to say that last slide was brilliant. And I don't think that there was anything on there that MusiCares also doesn't profess, especially it's okay to not be okay and to take care of yourself. And it's a process, and it's okay to reach out for assistance. So that's why we're both here. So again, just thank you to Maria and her team and the Mississippi Arts Commission. We're thrilled to be here as well. And even if you are a craft artist, it's very likely that you know somebody in the music industry. And I will tell you a bit about MusiCares, how we help, who we help, and some of our programs and services. So next slide, please. So MusiCares was established in 1989 by the Recording Academy. And many people know the Recording Academy as the organization that puts on the Grammys. And the intention was to help its own. So MusiCares helps the people behind the music because music gives so much to the world. And when we think of the musician, we define musician very broadly, and that is the ecosystem of the music industry. So that's anybody from the singer-songwriter to the producer, to the manager, to crew, to the tour bus driver, videographer. So anybody who makes a living or who made a living in the music industry and finds themselves in a time of an unforeseen need. We have 3 areas of focus. You can go to the next slide. And so you can just look at this and kind of think about what's on the slide. And then I'm going to talk about the 3 areas of focus and how it all plays into our holistic view of looking at individuals who come to us for assistance. We have human services. We assist with rent, funeral payments. We might help with utilities. We help with disaster relief. So we're very familiar with CERF Plus. And I love a lot of the resources that Cameron talked about. And NCAPER is wonderful with all of their presentations as well. So if you ever can see one of those, I highly recommend it as well. We have health services. We offer preventive clinics for those who are underinsured or who lack insurance. So those can be medical clinics, dental clinics, hearing clinics, mammogram clinics. We will help with somebody's medical bills and their dental bills. And our last area is mental health and addiction recovery. So we know that the music industry has its own unique rigors and stressors. We're very aware of mental health challenges, and compared to the general public, we have seen and studies have shown that there is an increase in depression, anxiety, and substance use. So we will get people to treatment for drug and alcohol use. We have relationships with facilities around the country, and we're able to get people the help that they need. We can also help with therapy and psychiatry visits. We have weekly support groups. And when somebody comes to us for assistance, we really look at them in a holistic manner. Because if someone is coming because they lost a job, well, they're concerned about their finances, which is going to impact their mental health and perhaps their physical health. Or perhaps they start with the physical health and everything is intertwined. So when we think of helping somebody, we look at all aspects of what's going on with their current situation and where we can provide support, whether it's by MusiCares or perhaps other resources that we're aware of. Next slide. So we never know what call is going to come in during the day. And that is because, as I said, people call us when there is an unforeseen circumstance. Someone might fall, they might break their leg, therefore they can't gig and they can't pay rent. So we might be able to pay rent. We might pay a medical bill. We get calls all the time for requests with assistance around funeral needs. And that's because perhaps there was an untimely death or a beloved family member passed away and the family didn't have funds for burial needs. So we will assist with burial needs. I mentioned disaster relief earlier. Way back in 2008, Hurricane Katrina is really where MusiCares made it made the mark on the map in terms of disaster relief, because we provided assistance to that community. And fast forward, we've seen people endure floods and wildfires, COVID certainly, and MusiCares is able to provide assistance around disaster relief. And we've also worked with other organizations such as CERF Plus, and they're incredible. And Cameron, I'm so sorry, but I saw the slide and I got excited, the guide around preparedness. So we really want to stress how to be proactive rather than reactive and get some of the information you need before any sort of disaster occurs. Regardless, we know that it's not always easy to do so, and we don't know when disasters will occur, and that's why we're there to help really during acute times of need. You can see on here referrals to and financial assistance for the full cost of substance use treatment, which I mentioned. We will pay rent, mortgage, utilities, car payments, insurance premiums. All payments go to a third party, and everything is made, payments are made by check. So do keep in mind that the grants are not coming directly to the person. Many relief organizations do send grant funds directly to the person. We are sending it to third parties to ensure payment is made. And it's also going to provide some relief for the person who is going through their time of struggle. Next slide. In addition to our direct financial assistance, we also have a panoply of programming. Obviously, pre-pandemic, we did this in person. And the beauty now is with most virtual opportunities is that people in LA can see the same webinar as the person in New York now. So our webinars span everything from taxes, budgeting 101, how to stay sober on the road, how to carry your instrument so you can avoid injury, hearing health, vocal health. We are constantly trying to tap into the needs and the unique interests of the music world and music makers. So if somebody comes to us and says, hey, can you do a workshop on disaster relief and tell us some of the great organizations that are out there, that's something we can put together, because we always have we're looking out for what is topical. We know that the landscape of the industry is constantly changing. We know that streaming has decreased income for people. The touring world is really tough right now. So we want to give people information so again, they are prepared for a time of need. You can see here that to be eligible for MusiCares, one has to have at least 5 paid years in the industry or credits on 6 commercially released tracks. Those requirements are specifically for folks who are requesting direct financial assistance. If someone wants to join a webinar, they do not need to meet these requirements. And the beauty of that is we're setting people up for success before they're embedded in this industry, because we want to provide education. The grant request process is fairly simple. We have an email, MusiCares relief@musicares.org. Somebody can email us, tell us a bit about what's going on, and request an application. We receive all materials and a team member will contact the person to further delve into what's going on with their unique situation. I always stress, typically at the beginning of a workshop such as this and at the end, all information is strictly confidential. Whatever information comes to us, it does not leave. So if Maria was to refer Cameron to MusiCares, and Maria then called 2 weeks later and said, hey, did Cameron ever call? We're not going to disclose any information. We know that it can be extremely humbling to request assistance, and we treat every case with confidentiality and integrity. Going back to some of the programs, we also have ongoing programs. These include smoking cessation, Tuned, which is a hearing health nationwide. We have a couple of financial offerings to address financial health. We have one-to-one financial coaching and access to a free financial app called YNAB. The goal of this is to provide tools around financial health and sustainability so you can stay in this industry even when times are tough. And my kind of tagline is how to keep the money you're making so you can keep making music. We have a fabulous program called, or resource called Resilience on the Road. And this is a suite of materials that address what it is to be for touring professionals. So it's anything from mental health to nutrition to relationships. And this is always changing. So we are always updating this resource. It's on our webpage. So if you know touring professionals who might benefit from this, you can go on our website, download it, and send it along. last year, we also launched the Humans of Hip Hop, which is an initiative for outreach to the hip hop community. And, you know, at MusiCares, we recognize that this ecosystem is quite diverse, and some of our programs will address the unique needs of various communities. For instance, we did something on mental health in the Latin community. We did money management in the Latin community. And that's what I mean about programming that is, we're very creative with the programming, given the fact that we know that there is a really wide scope of people in this industry. I know we're almost at time too. I think what I really want people to stress, or what I really want to stress is that MusiCares has designed our process to be as minimally burdensome as possible. So we're going to ask for professional information. We are going to ask for some financial information. This is a need-based program. And we're going to try to figure out, again, how we can assist people in the most holistic manner. We also assist family members. So if my spouse is the music person and I fall ill, we're able to assist this family because there is a music person involved. I encourage everybody to check out our website. We have ongoing support groups. We have weekly recovery support groups. You can see all of these ongoing programs, and you can also email us to get more information. I'm thinking about the slide that Cameron ended with, and maybe Cameron, if you could put it back up, that would be great. Again, all of those tenants that he mentioned, we echo.
You want me to stop sharing my screen then, Jennifer?
That'd be great, sure.
Okay, yeah.
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I see you deserve help too. Okay, not to be okay. There is no wrong way to react to an emergency, and we all know that people define emergency differently. And so one person's circumstance is going to be different than somebody else's. And MusiCares is keenly aware of the fact that everybody does react differently. And we will look at each case on an individual basis. Again, you can reach out to us at MusiCares Relief at musicares.org, and you can check out our website. And we look forward to, at least if we can assist you, we will provide resources, hopefully people who can. And again, CERF Plus is one of our wonderful partners in this emergency relief for the entertainment community and artist community. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Oh, that was very, very informative. Same to your presentation as well, Cameron. I'm really excited to be able to share this this video after, after this hour is over. I think this is going to be really helpful to our grantees in the future. We do have about 15 minutes for questions. So I would invite the attendees, if you have any questions, to check that out in the Q&A section, and then wait, it says no open questions. Okay. Let's see. So the attendees, y'all can, y'all are able to access this, I think. Right? I don't think I enabled the Q&A. Okay. All right. Well, while waiting, I do have some questions for both of you, just in case we don't have any questions from the audience. I was writing down questions just based on, what artists have asked me, about this. So if y'all don't mind, I'll just go ahead and start asking, and maybe that might inspire some people listening to ask their own questions. But this can be directed at both of you, Jennifer and Cameron. Um, let's say you have a really horrible year, like a parent or a spouse gets sick, and then a hurricane comes, and that, in the fall something happens, and then in the spring a natural disaster happens. Are y'all able to give uh funding to people more than once a year? Is there a cap if someone has a terrible year?
I'll jump in. We look at a change in recent circumstances. So I'm thinking of a client who did lose one of her parents unexpectedly. And we provided some basic living need assistance because she took off time from work. And then I think it was about 2 or 3 months later, she was in a car accident. So we were able to provide additional assistance. So again, it goes back to what's going on with the person. And we look at really what's a recent change. And in that case, we can probably assist more than once. And our assistance might look different. It might be a grocery card. It might be rent. It might be, hey, you keep on coming back, but we're going to get you some financial coaching now. So we're really trying to see what's going to make the most sense at each time.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
super responsive. For us, it's one grant per emergency. So you can't get two grants for the exact same emergency, but we also have kind of a strange clause, although there's reason for it. It's one per calendar year. So you could have had a difficult thing in November and then another difficult thing in January, or you just waited till January and applied separately, and then you would be eligible for two grants. So strange little hiccup in there, but yeah, if they're two separate practice-threatening emergencies and you've just had a really tough time, we see that a lot. In fact, we have a lot of folks who apply for different related climate-related disasters that have happened within a very short period of time, and we're trying to kind of space those out, but each event would be eligible.
Yeah. Wow. And you're talking about climate events, Cameron. I actually had this question. You mentioned that, the response to Surf Plus's funding has tripled. And do you think that is it a bunch of factors? Are y'all helping get the word out, or is it because there's just an unprecedented and increasing amount of natural disasters that are happening each year? Um,
Yeah, really
is
great question. I know some of that answer, although I'm sure there is some nuance I'm not familiar with as to why it's growing. When I started, I remember there were conversations about how our network of grantees was aging. We were concerned we might not have enough craft artists in order to run the program, all sorts of conversations around outreach. Um, since that time, everything has shifted. I think about a quarter of our grantees are from Puerto Rico. That has been our largest geographic region. We've made a really concerted effort to get to know the artisans within Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is also prone to a lot of climate-related disasters, such as hurricanes. Climate-related disasters across the board, though, for all artists are up. I think Vermont has had one of its toughest years. Past 2 years have had two major floods. Connecticut and New York and New Jersey just had a major flood. Alaska had a landslide with a lot of totem pole carvers, which are very well known. So we've seen a definite increase in really both of those areas. But we're also seeing a trend of having younger artists and more BIPOC artists apply to the program, which for me is a really positive direction. It seems like for whatever reason, our program has done better outreach and is bringing more folks into the circle. So I'm really excited about that last piece, but it's also created an increased demand. So it's really a bunch of factors, as well as I think the pandemic really kind of thrust us into the spotlight and had a lot more folks know about us.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, that's, gosh, the state of the world with a lot of these disasters, but it's great that y'all have a wider outreach now. So, we definitely spread the word about y'all to our grantees and MusiCares as well. Jennifer, I wanted to ask you this question. You had mentioned y'all had 10 weekly support groups. And I know you talked about programming. I don't know if they overlap, but can you maybe mention some examples of what these support groups are?
Sure. So we have weekly recovery groups, and these groups are specifically for folks who are in recovery and in the industry. So those are like two common denominators. It's really amazing to be in a group where you have somebody who's 30 years in sobriety, and then somebody who gets out of rehab 4 days before the group, and they come to the group and say, how do I get back on tour? How do I do this?
Yeah.
How can I do this clean and sober? So those support groups are specifically related to the recovery process.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have other support groups that are, there's a women's focus, there's LGBTQ+, there is BIPOC and Black community support group, there is an emotional health support group. And again, those are on our websites. They are all incredibly engaged, committed groups. They're not therapy groups. These are simply support groups.
Right.
And you're hearing from other people in the industry who are just like-minded. They get it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think that's great. I definitely want to spread the word about that because it's just nice to be in community,
Yes.
as an
It's
artist.
community and connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes, there may not be a lot of people near you that are kind of going through that. So I think that's really cool that y'all do that. I think that's a great resource. I had another question, and I'll just maybe go back and forth, but this one's for you, Cameron. Um, because I know, Jennifer, you said that y'all pay a lot of this through third party. And so my question, I guess, for Cameron is, because we get this too, um, are these grants considered taxable income for the grantees?
So, um, great question. So we do not, since they're emergency relief grants, we do not issue 1099s as part of these grants. They are $3,000 crash grants. No real strings attached in terms of, we don't ask how you've spent that money once, you've received it. It's up to you. That being said, you do have to be careful if you are on any sort of benefits, that a $3,000 full of cash doesn't affect anything else. So, I do caution, and we have had a few artists say they can't accept the grant once they check their benefits, which is always very disappointing
Right.
to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. Yeah. Yeah, that is tough. Okay, well, thanks for answering that. We do have a question from one of our attendees, and this question is, do any of these resources support freelance wardrobe stylists working in the film and fashion industry? I guess that could be for either of you.
So if this person has done this work within the industry, if they've done costuming for an artist, a musical artist, yes. For those who it is strictly theater or acting, I will put a plug in for the Entertainment Community Fund. That is the other relief organization that assists the entertainment world, and does a lot with this community of artists. But
Okay.
for MusiCares, there has to be a connection within the music industry.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. And yeah, that's a good tip for the other organization. Cameron, do you want to
I
answer?
think Jennifer said it beautifully. I was actually going to mention the entertainment fund.
Yeah,
If folks are making clothing by hand and there's significant embroidery or manipulation material, then potentially it could be a craft art as well. So just want to note we do support fabric artists, but it kind of depends on a lot of factors. So yeah.
right. Yeah. Okay. All right, great. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. I don't see if any of our attendees have any questions. That might be our only one. But let me see. I have a bunch, but I don't want to like take up too much time. But Jennifer, I'll actually ask this for you. Can you talk a little bit more about those preventative clinics and kind of how y'all
Sure.
partner with medical institutions for those?
Sure. So we will offer their biannual clinics, and they currently, I will say this month, it is around like physical therapy, the musician as an athlete.
Mm,
So chiropractor, physical therapy, and then there's dental clinics. So for folks, again, who don't have insurance, or if they do, it's oftentimes very limited insurance. The goal is to keep everybody healthy and to promote proactive self-care and taking care of yourself so you can get out there and do your work and make your music.
yeah.
There's a sign-up process, and again, everything is on the website, and you can check it out, see when those clinics are. In the event that someone misses this clinic, if you crack a tooth and you need to get to a dentist, give us a call, email us. We will absolutely see how we can provide support to get you to that dentist without waiting until the next dental clinic.
Yeah. And do y'all do the clinics all over the US?
They are all, we try to hit most states,
Mhm.
most major music cities, and then
Great.
obviously some of the other smaller music cities. I will say that we've helped people in every state, and we are constantly broadening our scope of providers around the country.
That's great. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, Cameron, did you have anything to add? Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna jump in with something, but that's fine. Um, okay, well, we have a few minutes left. I think that, let's see. I mean, I could ask you, Cameron, if you want, maybe just 1 minute to talk about another program, since I asked Jennifer, but that FEMA tool replacement grant program, that seems really, really great for artists in our network, if you wanted to talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, happy to. So because it's administered through FEMA, it has to be a federally declared emergency, which I'm sure most folks here are familiar with, but basically the governor has to declare, the president has to approve it. And these are $500 um, uh, checks, payments, whatever you want to call it, that artists or creatives can apply if they have lost any of their tools as a result of the disaster. This program just started probably 3 or 4 months ago. So I think, A, I'm very excited to see how it goes. B, I think it's going to be more complicated than I think folks realize. So there might be some revisions, additions, changes in the foreseeable future. But honestly, it was something that we kept talking to FEMA, kept advocating for, and it almost given up on, to be honest. It had been almost 15 years we've been asking for something like this, and just eventually we're like, I don't think it's going to happen. And then they called us and said, we're going to do that thing that you keep talking about. And I was blown away. And I really want to give props to Craig Nutt, Cornelia Carey. They were the ones who spearheaded this. And they were two of the folks who were with CERF Plus the longest. So just want to give a shout out to them. But there is a webinar about it that goes into a lot more detail that was hosted by our executive director, Ruby Lopez Harper. Happy to share that with you, Maria, if
Oh,
it's of
yeah.
interest for folks to listen to.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna just, yeah, make a note of that. That's great.
Folks
Oh,
ask very specific questions during that. Like, I
yeah.
have this guitar, and it's a lot more, yeah, in the weeds.
And
Okay.
I'm just gonna add, because we're talking about replacement, we too, due to a disaster, due to a theft, we're able to consider equipment replacement as well. And certainly we hear a lot about that
Yeah.
post natural disaster.
Right. Oh, great. Okay. Well, glad that we have two resources to pass on for this. Well, wow, it's 6:30. We've reached our time. I want to thank our attendees for listening, and we will be putting this up on our website. Again, it's the resources page, Tools for Creators. As soon as you click on Tools for Creators, it's every single Ask a Professional that we've done. I want to thank you so much, Jennifer and Cameron. You've been great to work with in preparing for this, and I'm really excited about all the information that you shared. So there's a lot of stuff out there for our artists, and thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, of course. All right, attendees, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'm going to stop recording. And yeah, Cameron and Jennifer, thank you. Have a good night, and I'll be in touch.
Thanks so much.
Bye.